March 12, 1942. Did 1621 hours over Toungoo, central Burma. The landscape below is hell. Smoke pillars twist upward from burning fuel depots. Burmese villages lie shattered, blackened earth where pagodas once stood. The Sitang River reflects the orange glow of distant fires. And along the roads, endless columns of refugees, Chinese soldiers, Burmese families, ox carts and mule trains crawl northward like an exodus from another century. Above this chaos, 3 P-40 Warhawks circle warily. In the lead cockpit, Charles Older stares through the smoke haze, jaw clenched. He speaks into the radio without looking away. "This isn't a battlefield, it's a graveyard." Smith's voice crackles back. "We hold as long as we can, then we fall back. Those are the orders." They both know the truth. The Japanese offensive through Burma is overwhelming. Toungoo is the next domino. Lose Toungoo, and the road to Kunming opens. The Japanese hammer falls. At 1627, Chennault's radio call comes through with brutal clarity. "All Tigers, enemy bombers approaching Toungoo. Strength massive. They're leveling the town for infantry advance. Older banks hard toward the west. Within minutes, they see them. A massive formation of Ki-49 Donryu Helen bombers, flanked by Ki-43 Oscars, glints in the dying light. The bombers rumble forward, steady and purposeful." Smith whistles softly. "That's 40, maybe 50? Older grimly replies. "Doesn't matter. We hit them anyway." The Tigers dive against the storm. Wind tears at Older's flight jacket as he pushes his P-40 straight down. The bomber formation grows larger, engines thundering, gunners braced at their stations. Older fires first. His .50 calibers shred the tail section of a Ki-49. The bomber erupts into flames, spiraling downward like a collapsing star. Smith rakes another bomber's engines. Haywood fires a full burst straight through a cockpit canopy. 2 bombers drop out of formation, detonating against the jungle floor. But the Oscars swarm like hornets. One latches onto Smith's tail, peppering his fuselage with tracers. Smith dives toward the canopy of jungle trees, using terrain as a shield. Another Oscar streaks at Older. Tracers whip across his wings. He jerks the stick left, then dives sharply. The Oscar overshoots. Older snaps a tight climbing turn, a dangerous move for a P-40, and fires as the Oscar pulls up. The fragile Japanese fighter bursts apart in a blossom of fire. The fall of Toungoo. But for every bomber they bring down, 3 more slip through. The sky grows darker as bombs fall across Toungoo. Massive explosions shake the earth. Warehouses erupt in fire. Barracks collapse into rubble. Columns of smoke rise so thick they blot out the sun. Older watches helplessly as the town is crushed beneath waves of destruction. He exhales through clenched teeth. "We can't stop all of them," Smith answers quietly. "No, but we can make them pay for every inch." Forced withdrawal. After nearly an hour of combat, the AVG is running on fumes, ammunition is nearly gone, engines are overheating. Chennault's order comes through. "All Tigers, disengage, fall back to Loiwing. Toungoo is lost." The words hit like a punch. Toungoo, one of the last major defensive positions in Burma, has fallen. The Tigers bank north, leaving smoke and destruction behind them. Below, thousands of Chinese infantry scramble across fields, retreating under fire. Japanese tanks punch through broken lines. Burmese civilians flee into the forests. Burma is collapsing, a land on the brink. As evening settles over the jungle, Smith and Older land at Loiwing Airfield. The ground crews rush to refuel and rearm, but one mechanic shakes his head. "We're running out of ammo, sir. Oil, too. Fuel, maybe enough for another day." Older wipes sweat from his brow. "Another day is all we need." He doesn't believe it, but he says it anyway. Inside the briefing hut, Chennault spreads new reconnaissance photos across the table. Japanese armored divisions push north. Their air wings now operate from freshly captured airfields. They are coming fast. Chennault looks exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, hands shaking slightly, but his voice is steady. "Gentlemen, we are losing Burma, but we are not losing China." He points toward the mountains. "As long as we hold the skies over the Burma Road, China lives," Smith mutters. "And if we don't?" Chennault meets his gaze. "Then China dies, and Asia with it." Silence falls. The pilots understand. Tomorrow they will fly again. Tomorrow they will fight again. Tomorrow they may die. But tonight they rest beside their battered machines, listening to the distant rumble of Japanese artillery creeping closer. Burma is falling. But the Tigers are not done. April 25, 1942, dawn over the Salween Gorge, China-Burma border. A curtain of mist hangs over the jagged cliffs of the Salween River. The water below churns violently, smashing itself against sheer rock walls that rise thousands of feet into the air. The only road threading through this terrain, a thin dirt track blasted into mountainsides, is the final lifeline keeping China alive. And now, the Japanese intend to cut it. In the early morning haze, Captain Charles Older banks his P-40 low, following the twisting river westward. Behind him, Tom Haywood and James Marshall fly in tight formation. Older clicks his radio. All Tigers, eyes open. Recon reported enemy armor on the Burma side. If they cross this gorge, China's done. Haywood responds, voice tight. Then we make sure they don't. Ahead, the mist breaks, revealing something terrifying. Columns of Japanese trucks and tanks snake toward the gorge entrance. Engineers erect pontoon bridges. Anti-aircraft guns are being rolled into position. The enemy is preparing for the push Chennault feared most. The breakthrough into China through the Salween Pass. The impossibility of defense. On a ridge high above the gorge, Chinese troops from the 36th Division crouch among boulders. Their uniforms are faded, their ammunition limited, but their faces are resolute. They know what's at stake. A Chinese officer waves a signal flag toward the incoming P-40s. Older dips his wings in acknowledgement. The Japanese convoy continues advancing, engines rumbling, dust clouds rising behind them. Without air support, the Chinese infantry below would be wiped out within hours. Chennault had been brutally clear during last night's briefing. If they cross that river, gentlemen, they march straight into Yunnan, and then nothing stops them. So the Tigers fly, exhausted, undermanned, running on what little fuel and ammunition remains, to hold a line armies cannot. The first strike. At 0622, Older pushes his throttle forward. The P-40 dives. Wind screams against the canopy as he lines up on a column of Hago light tanks. He squeezes the trigger. 50 caliber tracers rip through the leading vehicle. Its turret bursts off in a fireball, tumbling into the ravine. Japanese soldiers scatter. Haywood rolls inverted and unloads a full burst into a truck carrying sappers. It detonates spectacularly, sending debris raining down into the gorge. Marshall targets a row of artillery tractors, one burst, then another, and the entire line erupts in flame. Below, Chinese defenders roar in triumph. Above, Older yells into his radio. Keep hitting them. Break the bridge crews. They cross nothing today. The enemies answer. The Japanese react quickly. Anti-aircraft crews sprint into position. Dozens of Type 98 20mm guns open fire at once. Black puffs of smoke pepper the sky. Tracers streak upward like angry wasps. Haywood shouts, "Jesus, that's heavy. Break right." Older banks sharply, narrowly avoiding a burst that tears holes through his left wingtip. The cockpit fills with the smell of burning metal. Another AA burst slams into Marshall's tail assembly. His P-40 spirals dangerously before he regains control. "I'm hit, but I'm flying. Coming around again." Older exhales in relief. But the Japanese are already adjusting, tracking them, tightening their pattern, bracketing the skies. If the Tigers make another pass, it will be through a wall of fire. Older makes the decision instantly. "We hit them anyway. Follow me." Through hellfire. The 3 AVG fighters turn back into the storm. Every Japanese gun on the ridge opens up. Shells burst so close the shockwaves rattle the cockpit. Shrapnel pings off fuselages. Haywood's canopy cracks, sending a spray of glass against his cheek. But they keep going. Older fires a burst that annihilates an entire bridge-building crew. Haywood strafes a line of ammunition trucks that erupt into a chain of explosions, sending fireballs rolling through enemy ranks. Marshall targets the pontoon boats themselves, shredding the canvas and scattering engineers into the river. The Japanese advance stalls completely. On the ridge, Chinese troops hold their line, firing down with renewed determination. The gorge becomes a killing ground. The line holds. By late afternoon, the Japanese retreat from the riverbank, dragging crippled tanks and destroyed equipment back toward the jungle. The pontoon bridge lies in tatters. The road is blocked by burning machinery, and the Salween, narrow, violent, uncrossable, continues to cut a natural wall between Burma and China. From above, Older watches the withdrawal. He exhales for the first time all day. Haywood radios weakly. "I think we did it, Charlie. I think we actually held them." Older replies, "We didn't hold them. Everyone down there did. We just kept the sky clean." His P-40 is riddled with holes. Fuel is nearly gone. His hands shake from adrenaline and exhaustion. But they have done it. China is safe, for now. As the 3 battered fighters turn toward Loiwing in the fading sunset, Older looks down at the winding cliffs of the Salween Gorge, the place where history might have turned. Thanks to a handful of volunteer pilots and a desperate line of defenders, it did not. Evening, April 25th, 1942, Loiwing Airfield, China. The sun sinks behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the battered airstrip. Mechanics swarmed the returning P-40s the moment their wheels touched the ground, their faces a blend of shock and admiration. Older's aircraft looks like it has been dragged through a buzzsaw, holes stitched across its fuselage, torn flaps, a fuel leak dripping slowly onto the dirt. Chennault walks toward them, trenchcoat fluttering in the warm evening wind, pipe clenched in his teeth. He stops in front of the three men, Older, Haywood, and Marshall, and surveys the damage. Then he gives one sharp nod. You kept the Salween closed? No speeches, no ceremony, just 7 words that carry the weight of continents. A grim roll call. Behind the hangars, the rest of the AVG gathers for what has become a nightly ritual, the roll call for pilots who didn't return. Tonight, mercifully, all 3 from the Salween strike are present, but other names are read instead, men lost earlier that week in dogfights over Rangoon, ambushes in monsoon clouds, mechanical failures over mountains too high to survive. Each name is followed by silence. The Flying Tigers are a shrinking unit. Every victory costs them blood, machines, and friends. But they fight because they know the alternative. A China cut in half, a Japan emboldened to strike deeper, an entire front collapsing. Older stands beside Haywood, who wipes dried blood from his cracked canopy frame with a rag. Marshall leans against a crate, smoking a cigarette with trembling fingers. No one speaks of fear. There's no need. Every man here understands it intimately. We're outnumbered, not outmatched. Chennault steps forward and addresses the group in his rough, gravel-dark voice. Tokyo thinks this front will fall because we are few. They forget what a few determined men can do. He gestures toward the sky, toward the fading contrail still visible over the mountains. You grounded an entire Japanese offensive today. You bought China another month, maybe more. The pilots exchange glances. Exhaustion pulls at their faces, but pride steels their spines. Chennault continues. We'll get more parts, we'll patch the planes, and tomorrow we go again. He walks away, leaving the pilots staring at the horizon where the last light bleeds into dusk, a reminder that dawn will come again, and with it, another battle. Moments in the quiet. Later that night, Older sits outside his tent sharpening a pocket knife, a habit he does when the adrenaline won't let him sleep. Haywood approaches, still bandaged. Charlie, he says, settling onto an ammo crate, did you see how close that flak burst got? Thought my head was coming off. Older smirks tiredly. If it took your head off, we'd have noticed. The silence alone would have alerted us. Haywood laughs, too loud, too sudden, the kind of laugh men use to push back the darkness. Marshall joins them, cigarette glowing in the night. You think they'll try the Salween again? Older doesn't answer immediately. He flips the knife blade closed with a soft click. They will, he finally says, but we'll be waiting. The 3 sit quietly under a sky filled with stars. The same stars shining over Tokyo, Washington, and Berlin. The world is on fire, but up here the night feels almost peaceful. Almost. The letter home. Inside his tent, Older opens a small canvas pouch. Inside is a letter, worn, folded, smudged by sweat and oil. It's from his sister in California. He reads the lines again. We heard rumors about American volunteers in China. Are you with them? Please write back. Please be safe. Older folds the letter and slides it back into the pouch. He knows he might never write that reply, but he also knows why he's here. It wasn't for money, or glory, or medals the U.S. government couldn't officially give him. He's here because if China falls today, America bleeds tomorrow. And as long as he and the other Tigers draw breath, they'll keep flying. The night before the storm. As midnight approaches, the distant rumble of Japanese artillery echoes faintly across the mountains, a reminder that the enemy is regrouping, planning, waiting. But so are the Tigers. Older closes his eyes. He can still see the burning pontoon bridge, the shattered Japanese armor, the Chinese soldiers cheering from the cliffs. Tomorrow, they will fly again. They always do. But for a few hours, there is quiet, a fragile peace balanced on the edge of another day of war. And the Flying Tigers sleep, battered, bruised, undersupplied, and outnumbered. But unbeaten. Not yet. Dawn, May 4th, 1942. Baoshan Airfield, near the Burma frontier. The sky is a sheet of pale gold as the sun lifts above the jagged mountains. A lone P-40 sits at the end of the runway, engine coughing to life in the cold morning air. The smell of gasoline and dust hangs heavy. Older climbs into the cockpit, cinching his harness tight. Today, he's not just flying, He's escorting a Chinese evacuation column, the last civilians fleeing before Japanese troops overrun the region. Chennault's voice echoes in his head. Protect those people, whatever it takes. Older taxis out, passing a row of grounded P-40s with their cowling removed, mechanics working with bare hands and improvised tools. Supplies are gone. Ammunition is low, every remaining aircraft matters. And yet, the Tigers launch anyway. 6 planes into the morning haze, 6 planes standing between survival and annihilation. The refugees, down below, winding through the valleys, thousands of civilians push carts, carry children, and cling to whatever belongings they can. They are fleeing from villages already swallowed by Japanese forces. Older can see them clearly from the cockpit, tiny figures on the snake-like trail. God, they're everywhere, he murmurs. Haywood's voice answers through the radio. That's who we're fighting for, Charlie. Another voice cuts in, Marshall tense. Bandits, 11 o'clock high, coming fast. Zeros, a full squadron. The sky erupts. The Japanese fighters dive in a coordinated attack, sunlight glittering off their wings. Their leader, a veteran wearing a silk flight scarf, signals to his wingmen. They form a claw-like formation descending on the slower P-40s. Older banks hard. The G-forces crush him into the seat. Gunfire crackles through the sky. Tracer rounds streak past like burning needles. A Zero slides behind Marshall's plane. Older sees the danger immediately. Marshall, brake right, now. Marshall yanks the stick. The Zero overshoots, exposing its belly. Older pulls the trigger. His 50 cals thunder. The Zero bursts into flames and spirals into the mountains below. But more Japanese fighters pour in. They outnumber the Tigers 3-1. A battle without altitude. The P-40s excel in dives and high-speed passes, but the Tigers have no altitude advantage this time. They're fighting from below, clawing upward, hoping to break the Zero formation before it reaches the refugee column. Haywood takes a hit. Smoke pours from his engine. I'm losing oil pressure. Get out of here, Older orders. Head east, we'll cover you. Haywood pulls away, limping toward friendlier skies. 3 Zeros immediately pursue him. Older curses and dives after them. The airframe groans. He squeezes the trigger. Bullets rake across the lead Zero's wing. It shatters, dropping into the valley. The other 2 break off, buying Haywood precious seconds. A desperate gambit. Below, Japanese ground units have spotted the refugee column and begin firing mortar rounds. The explosions inch closer to the civilians scrambling up the mountain road. Older's blood runs cold. They're targeting the refugees. We've got to stop them. He banks sharply downward, ignoring Chennault's strict rule, never dogfight near the ground. But there is no choice. He lines up on the Japanese mortar crew, squeezes his last belt of ammunition, and silence. He's out of rounds. A Zero appears out of the sun, guns blazing. The rounds hammer into Older's wings, shredding fabric and puncturing the fuel tank. The cockpit fills with the smell of gasoline. Marshall's voice shouts over the radio. Charlie, you're on fire! Bail out! Older checks his altitude. Too low to jump, too high to crash land safely. The Zero loops around for the killing pass. Older grips the stick. Not yet. He pushes the throttle forward. The ram. The Zero dives in. Older climbs head on. For a split second, both pilots lock eyes through the canopies, 2 warriors suspended between life and death. Older slams the P-40 sideways. The left wing clips the Zero's tail. Both aircraft explode in debris and smoke. Older's engine seizes. He loses all control. The P-40 plunges into the valley, bouncing across a terraced field before skidding to a violent halt in a cloud of dust. For a moment, nothing. Then a canopy pops open. A silhouette crawls out. Older is alive. Barely. Chinese farmers rush from the hillside, pulling him free seconds before the fuel tank ignites in a roaring fireball. As they carry him toward the refugee column, he looks back at the burning wreck. Breathing ragged, vision blurred, but eyes defiant. The Tigers held, the civilians escaped, the Japanese attack failed. May 6, 1942, Kunming Airfield, China, 2 days after Older's crash. A battered truck rolls slowly through the gates, its bed filled with refugees, dusty, exhausted, hungry, but alive. Walking alongside them, supported by 2 Chinese soldiers, is Charles Older, his arm in a makeshift sling, his face bruised and stitched. The moment the refugees appear, the airfield erupts with cheers. Nurses rush forward, mechanics stop working and salute. Kids from the nearby village wave torn flags as families reunite in tears. At the front of the crowd stands Claire Chennault, arms crossed, pipe clenched between his teeth. Older steps toward him, limping. Chennault studies him for several long seconds. Then, without a word, he removes the pipe, extends his hand, and says quietly,
"You did good, Charles."
Older shakes it, wincing at the pain. Chennault leans closer. "You saved them. Every last one. That's why we fight." Behind them, the refugees bow deeply. Dozens at first, then hundreds. Older lowers his head in return, humbled. The sky goes quiet. For the first time in weeks, no Japanese aircraft appear over Kunming. Their offensive has stalled. The failed assault at the Salween, the ambushes by the Flying Tigers, and the stiffening Chinese resistance have forced Tokyo to reconsider its strategy. But for the Tigers, there is no celebration. They are almost out of fuel. They are nearly out of ammunition. And most of their P-40s sit crippled on the ground, wings patched with scrap metal, engines coughing their last breaths. In the makeshift infirmary, Marshall sits beside Older's cot, flipping through a deck of bent playing cards. "They say we might not last another month." Older nods.
"Maybe not."
Marshall smirks tiredly. "Hell of a way to go out, though, huh?" Older manages a faint grin. "We're still here. That counts for something." A squadron fades away. By June, the AVG's contract ends. The U.S. Army Air Forces, now fully at war, move in to take over operations. New pilots, new aircraft, new orders. The Flying Tigers, as the world knew them, will cease to exist. One by one, the men pack their bags, sign their discharge papers, and prepare to head home, back to a country that barely knew they'd been gone. On the final day, Chennault gathers the remaining pilots in front of a row of patched, bullet-scarred P-40s. His voice is gruffer than usual. No unit in this war fought harder, or with so little, or accomplished so much. History won't forget you, China won't forget you, I won't forget you. Older, still stiff and healing, stands at the edge of the formation. He looks at the faces around him, men who had flown through storms of bullets, defended strangers, and held a collapsing front together with raw courage. Most are smiling, some are crying, all are changed forever. The road home. Older boards a transport aircraft bound for India. As the engines roar, he looks out the window at the mountains carved in dawn light. The same mountains he fought over, bled over, nearly died over. Marshall sits behind him, tapping his shoulder. "Think the Air Force will ever let us fly together again?" Older chuckles. "Knowing our luck, probably." The aircraft lifts off, Kunming shrinks behind them, the world keeps turning. A legend takes flight. Years later, Americans would learn the truth about the volunteers who painted shark mouths on their planes, who fought Japan before their country officially entered the war, who stopped Japanese armor at the Salween, who saved tens of thousands of Chinese civilians. The newspapers would call them heroes. Hollywood would call them icons. Historians would call them the most effective mercenary air squadron in modern history. But to the Chinese people, they were something far simpler, far greater. Hufei, the Flying Tigers, men who came from across the ocean to fight for a land not their own, to protect a people they barely knew, and to stand firm when the world expected them to fall. The final image. In a museum in Kunming today, a single artifact sits beneath soft light. A twisted metal shard from a P-40's wing, scorched and punctured, recovered from a field not far from the Salween River. Next to it is a small brass plaque. From the aircraft of Charles Older Flying Tigers, May 1942, he fought for China's freedom. Visitors walk past. Children point at the shark-mouthed nose art painted nearby. Some pause, reading the plaque again. And in that quiet room, one truth echoes through history. The Flying Tigers may have been few, but their courage was enough to change the course of a nation, enough to outfly an empire, enough to become legend.